All right, guys, and welcome back to the Gulf Coast Growth Show. And I guess now we are going to officially have to quit saying virtual edition because it seems like virtual is just the new thing. So just the Gulf Coast Growth Show. And so we are excited today. We have got a second-time guest, Patrick Maher from Gulf Winds down there in the port region, one of the bigger and more sophisticated logistic companies here in the Houston area and in the Ship Channel region. I've actually had the pleasure of being on site and seeing their location one time, and it's just absolutely amazing the work that they're doing. And as many of us know, with the world being shifted the way that it is, trade, the dynamics, things that are coming in and out of the port, even the things that are being manufactured and needed here in the United States and across the globe has shifted dramatically. And with lockdowns, we've actually had a couple of people on to talk about the differences and the things that are taking place as we go out there and try to get work done. And so we know before things can be made, they have to get shipped in and get shipped out. And there's a lot of things that go into that behind the scenes. And so Patrick's going to share a little bit about the interesting changes and dynamics that they have. And then he's also going to talk a little bit about the work that they've done. On our last episode, or one of our episodes, we had the pleasure of having their CEO, Todd, join us. And the thing that was really astounding and resonated with a lot of our audience was just the work that they do to be not just a great place to work, but probably a premier place to work. And so I'm excited to hear about some of the shifts that they're doing, some of the things that they're doing to keep employee engagement high and modify the work environment to really meet the needs of their employees and meet the needs of also their customers. So Patrick, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. As always, thank you.
Excited to have you. And we are pumped to talk about this on this episode. So we'll just kind of fire away. So just give us a refresher for those that aren't familiar with what you guys do, your role over there. Give us a quick backdrop of the work that you guys are doing.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. So, look, Gulf Winds we're a local company here in Houston. We're going to celebrate our 25th year next year, which we're very proud of. We primarily serve the Port of Houston, hauling import-export ocean containers. We also have some large warehouses here down in the Barber's Cut and Bayport area. We've expanded out over the last 25 years. We're a premier player up there in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, servicing the rails up there. And we're also in Memphis, Tennessee, and also Mobile, Alabama, to kind of take our growth over there to the eastern seaboard, where we're eventually going to set up shop as well. So we see a tremendous amount of growth here locally, and we've seen that over the last 25 years. We've really grown as the Port of Houston has grown, and we're going to continue to do that. A lot of great things happening over there, even in the face of COVID and their response. And even as we come out of it, which we're going to talk about.
Fantastic. And so, again, this will be really the third time that we've had somebody representing from your organization, which is, I think, so far, it might be the new Gulf Coast Growth Show record for most company visits. But it speaks to the organization in itself, the work that they're doing, and the footprint that they have. We have, in my opinion, and I think most of our opinions, probably the most dominant port, probably the most significant port when it comes to just sheer volume, size, and then really the amount of work that it takes and the amount of regions and areas that it serves here in the United States. And so we're proud of it. And we know you guys play a big role in that. And you have to stay on top of the trends and things that are taking place. So let's talk a little bit about some of the trends that are taking place inside your company. There's been some shifts. There's been some pivots. We've all had to, flip our world upside down and you can't just, call it a day when things, it's not like, essentially you guys are absolutely essential. So talk to us a little bit about some of the things that are taking place, some of the dynamics that you've had to pivot and shift with, and what you guys are doing to keep that kind of signature, great place to work atmosphere.
Yeah, well, look, I think it's been a long year, obviously for everyone. There's been starts, there's been stops. It's kind of crazy to think that we're 8 months into this, and we're even having a Zoom call, right, where we were in person the last time we met. But look, that's the world that we live in. We talk a lot about internally, Jason, about just taking it day to day, right? Let's just win the day. Let's win the week. And if we do that, we can stay focused. The other thing too, I think that's important is that we just try to control the controllables. And there's a lot of things that are outside of our control, even within our business, within the logistics space, that we can focus on and probably get distracted if we focus on it too much. But at the end of the day, we don't control it, but we do control what goes on, the culture, the service, what goes on within our four walls. And so that's just been a big thing, just from a high level perspective, that we've just tried to focus on this year. We tried to focus on it prior, but this year, it's really been amplified. And I think that's a theme that's really come out of COVID, at least for me personally, is that there were things that we said and we focused on before, but really COVID and just the situation that everybody's in has been kind of a great accelerator, right? If there were issues maybe in the business before, weaknesses, maybe soft spots in the economy, soft spots in one's business model, well, within 8 months, that was accelerated. Sometimes very good for people, and sometimes very bad. Maybe something that would have taken 5 to 10 years before now has been brought to the surface within the matter of weeks or maybe even months.
Yeah, that's one thing that you can absolutely say. And I think one of the things I witnessed was almost and I see it and I'm feeling it a lot of, is with the rush from the government to supply funds through PPP and a lot of the services, it almost created this Band-Aid. And so for a little while, it's almost like people, okay, jobs are different, but everything's fine. Well, now we're starting to get over the hump where a lot of that money's been eaten up and people are starting to get a really true outline of where they're at and where their business is at. And that's where those exposures start to happen. At first you're like, okay, we're going to be fine. And then you're like, wait a minute, we perhaps weren't as efficient here, or we weren't as efficient there, or maybe my team's not as equipped as I thought that they were, or potentially they're getting exposed because they were able to hide behind someone else's work, but now they're getting isolated in a situation where I'm counting on them and I'm needing them to step up. So you're 100% right. We're seeing that across the board. So you guys have an interesting dynamic because you've got, office administrative staff, you've got warehouse staff, you've got people out there in trucks and making things happen. So how do you guys facilitate and what's it been like trying to really get, wrapped around safety and communication? Communication's got to be an all-time high. Right. Talk to me about how that's working for you guys and really what you've seen change and then what you've done to address it.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things there, Jason. I mean, first of all, I feel like or probably everybody that's listening today, if you're on the Gulf Coast, as far as business continuity and disruption, we've lived with hurricanes, with floods, with outages of different sorts. We live in Houston where there's, massive amounts of traffic every day. And so, I think overall, this area of the country, one, is very resilient. And then two, has had a lot of practice when it comes to disruption. It's kind of what we do. And so whether or not that those plans are formalized, we have a business continuity plan that's public. We share a lot of information, obviously, on our website, but I wouldn't say we're always great at it. But over the last couple of years, we had to get really good at it really quick. Even when you think about times when the Port of Houston has been down, for a couple of days because of a hurricane, even recently this year, or even the situation that everybody ran into with Harvey. All of those things provide a lot of practice, but it also really amplifies the importance of communication, both internally and then externally. One thing we've learned, it's one thing to have that business continuity plan in place, but really what customers and what employees want to know is that, one, you care, right? And you're human. And then the other part of it is that you got it under control, right? And even if it's not perfect and there are delays, or even maybe if you don't know the answer today, that you're at least going to figure out a way to communicate that to them and keep them updated in real time. Whether or not we do it through our website, we use social media, obviously, we use email, both internally and externally. But one thing that we've learned is that consistency of the communication, even if it's just an update, letting them know, hey, we're watching this, we got this, hey, something's changed. People expect that now. If you rewind the tape, I don't know that 3 or 4 years ago, people expected that level of communication. but nowadays we do, right? We expect it from our schools, right? We expect it from our churches, our businesses. And so, we've learned a lot along the way, probably through some missteps. I'll say even for me personally, I felt that we weren't communicating a lot in the beginning, and then naturally as a communicator, I probably over communicated through this process. And I think there's still a balance. I don't think you want to get into a situation where you're over communicating, because then, look, we've all only got so many, hours and minutes in the day. And the other part of it too on the communication is the channels. The channels are really important, that businesses are utilizing the right channels with the right messages. And the reality is we're all inundated. You and I joked before we started airing that, at any given point in time, we're going to get an email, we're going to get a text. We use Microsoft Teams internally, so I could get a direct message from anybody in the company asking a question, which of course I'm going to answer. And so there's all these different ways that information is coming at us and questions. And so whether that's utilizing social the right way, but then utilizing email or utilizing your website, it's all very, very important. And you don't want to put things on social that should be on your website, right? Because you'll inundate the system, and vice versa. You don't want to put things on email that, hey, that could be a post on LinkedIn, right? Because people aren't going to respond to it as well.
Yeah, I think that's a great call out, and learning the cadence of communication. I was in a kind of essentially a board meeting with a discussion of individuals yesterday, and we were talking about the critical nature of cadence of education moving forward, because you're trying to bring people together. It's an organization, it's a service organization similar to the Economic Alliance. And in that discussion was, how do we continue to maintain and drive engagement? No different than employees or anything else. And one of the things that I was critical about is we can't just blast email all day long, because I open my inbox every day and I'm sorting through it and I'm trying to figure out what's the most critical things. And it'll get drowned out, and then things get lost, in the shuffle. So I think as leaders, you're correct. I think we instinctively default to, I've got to make sure I'm getting all this stuff out because it's important. But I had a great leader once tell me, if everything's important, nothing is important.
Right.
And so we have to really be focused on making the important things important and getting them to the right people. One of the things that we talked about is making sure that the communication that you distribute is identified and targeted for exactly who you're trying to reach, what audience, what channel, and then what's the best mode of transport or of communication for that particular group of people, and then limit it, right? So be more strategic. And we see that, right? Like, everybody's moved virtual. We'll talk a little bit about the pivots of communication, so how do you then move virtual? If everybody's going virtual, then now I've got an inbox full of everybody wanting me to come to their most important meeting event ever, webinar. And I'm like, dude, I got 14 webinar invites today because people are trying to do business and they don't know how to communicate to me. Why would I want to go watch that, event or something? So
yeah, I think that's no different than if you're going to schedule a meeting in person with a client or a business partner. Naturally, the person on the other end should ask the question, why, right? Why is this relevant? Why is this important to me? Why should I give up 30, 45 minutes, an hour of my time to do that? And it's no different than, if you send an email. And you brought up a good point. Everybody is working from home. And so all businesses at once seem to think, and I'll pick on COVID, that I needed to know everyone's COVID response from everything I've ever ordered online, every restaurant I've ever been to, everybody that ever had my email all of a sudden thought that I needed to know exactly what their response was, right? And we all got inundated, with those emails at the same time.
Yep. So now let's pivot a little bit. Let's talk about the world's been flipped upside down. That we're trying to, what I've seen, and I think we all understand, is as oil and gas has shifted, we're seeing also, countries are shut down. I mean, there's places where they're not, doing as much work. There's other places where they've opened up. And so I guess every day we're trying to figure out what you can get, what essentials are available, how you get them from, point A to point B when places are closed down. I can't even imagine the obstacles and things that have happened. So can you walk us a little bit through what, really what you've seen in the last 8 months, where it's, pivoted, and what kind of shifts and, changes that you guys have had to make to address some of these changes?
Yeah, so it's been a roller coaster, right? When you're involved in international trade, we're on an import, we're on the receiving end of something that was produced overseas, right? So it not only has to be produced overseas, but it's got to be shipped to a port. There's got to be equipment there to load it, and there's got to be a boat available to take it to the port of Houston, let's just say. So there's a lot of things that have to happen. Really perfectly in order for that flow to maintain. And so when you look at any type of disruption, you look at even how the pandemic started, where it started, how it got to Europe, how Europe started to shut down. Well, that affected manufacturing first in Asia and then in Europe. And then the goods essentially stopped for a period of time as they had to really hit the reset button, right? Italy was way ahead of this, and they really shut things down, including all their manufacturing, in the beginning. And so then you started to see a shift over to the U.S. where we couldn't get those goods and services. But look, businesses pivot; they get them from other places in the world. But then the virus started moving to the U.S. and then started moving to other parts of the world. So I don't envy our customers, especially our retail customers, who are tasked with trying to figure out our buying habits, because our buying habits as a country have really changed. I mean, there are things that we were buying before as a society that we're not buying now, and there's a lot of excess inventory of those goods that are filling warehouses up. And then on the other side of the equation, and it if you go shopping, there's not as much selection of goods. There's things that are out. Try to go get a bicycle right now, or a lawnmower, or anything for your outside sporting goods. And so you kind of sit there and go, man, those businesses should be crushing it. Well, I think they're staying afloat, but what's happened is there's a whole nother side of their business maybe that's not being purchased. And then the stuff that you want is backed up in the supply chain, because that manufacturing may be being sourced from an area of the world that's had to start, stop. And so that flow of goods comes in really erratically, which that's really been the theme of 2020 in ports across the country. And we're seeing it right now. We're on the upswing right now, but we really hit a pocket there where people stopped buying. And so the port volumes dropped pretty significantly. And then now they're increasing again, particularly out in Los Angeles. They hit record lows this summer. And then all of a sudden now they've hit record highs. How does that happen within 3 months? And so the supply chain itself is not set up for massive swings, right? It's set up more for consistency.
And I think one thing people lose sight of too is, like you mentioned this earlier, but lumber is a great example, right? So here we are in a place where, everybody's doing, work at home and remodeling, and houses are going through the roof, and because there's a shortage of sellers, and so people are remodeling their homes and putting them on the market. I mean, it's just unbelievable that you would have that transpire in a down economy where, but then money's cheap, and so everybody wants to keep buying stuff. Yet you got people lose. I mean, it's almost like, I mean, imagine trying to figure out where to move that and predict what you're going to do from a logistics perspective and from a supply chain perspective sounds just ridiculous. And then more importantly, is I think, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I mean, one stat that really stands out that I saw the other day was that as the economy is essentially flat, what we've seen is that goods, tangible goods, stuff that you and I are buying, is actually up close to 10%. But on the back end, services are down 10%. So services meaning travel, meaning restaurants, meaning just things that you would get serviced before. Those are down, whereas when we're spending our disposable income on stuff, right? And some of that's just the effect of a backlog. which that's what we're really watching. We're cautiously optimistic. We know we're in a bit of an upward trend right now, but to your point earlier, when some of that wears off and we kind of get what we need, um, what happens going into 2021, which is kind of up in the air right now.
Yeah, and we're starting to see that, right? We're starting to see, you got capex projects and things that are starting to get pushed back. You're starting to see things where people are pushing the pause button for a minute just to see how this whole thing shakes out. The pent up demand starting to kind of weigh on people, and then I think a lot of things people forget too is the cogs, right? The cost of these goods, right? So as supply and demand shifts, and more importantly, as people are having to figure out different ways to get it to us, that there's a a line where that person's trying to decide, do we transfer this cost to the consumer yet, or do we absorb this cost? And so, like you just said, okay, wow, how is Academy not just crushing it? They have no bikes, but they maybe have to let some people go, and they look like they're just destroying it. I walk in their store, there's nothing there. They have to be doing great. I'm like, yeah, but maybe every one of those bikes was profited at 30% less than it had, because just to get the bike or to get whatever they needed as essentials might have taken them forever, or to provide masks for your staff now all of a sudden, and enough cleaning supplies and sanitizer. I mean, janitorial supplies have to flown through the roof, and then you're getting everything at a premium. I think a lot of people forget that, right? So they think, I can't imagine y'all's cost just to shift or the pivot. What have you seen um, from a cost perspective, right? From a sheer logistics, if we were just talking about y'all's channels, has that gone up? Are you guys faced with those challenges?
Not as much,
Okay.
not as much because our drivers, are obviously essential workers. Our warehouse, obviously, we've had to do a lot more safety protocols. So yes, the cost on PPE, the cost of social distancing, has definitely gone up. But as a service provider, we're always moving, and so it hasn't had as great of an effect on us particularly.
Gotcha. Okay. And then now let's talk a little bit about forecasting. Where we think things are headed. I know it's kind of hard to predict in this environment, but you guys, I know, if I know your leadership, I know that y'all are on it, and you're starting to think through, as you wrap out 2020 and where we head for 2021. What are the critical indicators that you're looking at, changes in business dynamic as a whole, things that you guys are having to do from a leadership perspective differently when it comes to your teams? I mean, so what is really the forecast for 2021, not only for your organization, but what y'all are seeing from an economic perspective?
Yeah, I'll kind of start just a little bit at Gulf Winds. Two things that stand out. Our work from home program really started 2 years ago, and so we were set up when COVID came, because we were already essentially had worked the bugs and the kinks out of our work from home program. So we're going to continue to roll that into 2021 and beyond. We've really figured out really a good balance there, and just a plug for that program, or just work from home or work remotely in general, it comes down to choice. And that's something that we've learned, is that, each department, even sometimes each individual, is different. And you need to make sure you find the right fit. It's not really a one size fits all, but that's really the future, right? And we're seeing that with a lot of our customers, who I'd love to go see today in person, but the reality is their companies have really locked that down, right? They might be in the office a little bit, but they're not necessarily seeing outside vendors, which is a challenge. And we don't necessarily see that changing in the first part of 2021. The other thing too, Jason, that's out there is there's a lot of talent that's available in the market right now. People that may have been let go within certain industries. There's a lot of shifting going on. So we're going to take advantage of that, really to build our business, and really to find some areas and some talent that we can infuse into the organization, because really we're bullish about the economy long term. We're bullish about our position in the market, and really that relates to what we do. We still see international trade as being a big part of the story, in addition to U.S. manufacturing, but look, we all like to buy stuff, and a lot of times that stuff is made overseas. And we've also got a really great export environment, which is based on U.S. manufacturing being so strong, which is half of what we do. We do exports as well, which are made right here in Texas and in the USA. And so, really bullish moving forward, particularly for our goods and services related to trucking. And I think the biggest change that we've seen, and I'll kind of relate it back to the Port of Houston, and this is a shift that's been happening for several years now, but again, COVID has really accelerated it, and that is that Port of Houston has now become even more of a major gateway to the South Central region of the country for consumer goods outside of Houston. So if you drive around anywhere in this great city, you'll see warehouses pop up all over the place. We deliver to those warehouses today, but we're seeing a lot more opportunity to deliver up into the Dallas area through Houston, where the majority of that freight used to come in through LA Long Beach and be railed over. The Port of Houston has a great product with the shipping lines that can bring that product. It's called all water, either through the Suez Canal or through the Panama Canal, and go straight into Houston. And so from there, that can be trucked directly northbound into places like, obviously, the metroplex of Dallas. And that's where a lot of consumer goods go. That's where a lot of appliances go, retail, furniture, which are obviously very hot right now and will be for the foreseeable future. So we've seen customers shift. A big reason for that is the cost has become equalized between going through Los Angeles and going through Houston. And Los Angeles it continues to experience delays, whereas Port of Houston is very, very efficient. And then you have providers such as Gulf Winds on the land side that are able to really take that box and deliver it where it needs to go in a timely manner. And so shippers are sitting there and saying, you know what, everything being equal, am I going to go for a lot of uncertainty and risk on the West Coast, or am I going to go with less and probably more pro-business climate here in Houston? And that's working.
So I think that was a great way to throw me a softball. Because it's really important for me to emphasize this, and we'll do it in a non-partisan discussion, but I'll just keep it real simple for any of our audience. It's important to be engaged in your local economic environment. So if you're listening to this episode, really tune in to your local organizations like the Economic Alliance, Association of Builders and Contractors, the ACIT, anything that is industry related and has a direct flow through. And even if you are, listening to the show and you sell, valves, and that's your one main thing. And so sometimes we have a tendency to think about valves and not about who cares about the work that's happened in that ship channel for us to widen the ship channel so that we can create more flow, so that we can create more traffic, so that we can create more goods being pushed here versus through LA and New York. When you tune into those things and you get connected to your regional area, like just what you were just describing, is the purpose of this show, is really to educate our audience. It says it's a lot more than what you see from, driving from, you hit 16, you get 225, you get to the office, and then you make a couple of sales calls, you get in your car and you go home. Well, behind the scenes of all that stuff, we're trying to figure out, how do we get more stuff up that Panama Canal through our channel into the subsequent waterways, up and into Dallas, and then all the way into the Midwest, to where people say, I'm going that way because they've got better access, it's more cost effective, and I can make that happen better, and I'm going to do that. Because in between that, there becomes another job that then creates another job, which then creates a service job to fill those places, which then builds homes, which creates construction, which then needs roads, which then creates more construction. So I think it's really important when people tune in, regardless of partisanship, it's important to know and understand that it's more than just casting for, a particular side. It's casting what's going to impact your economy, what's going to impact the people in your circle. Show up at a meeting or two, right? Get involved and play a significant role with those individuals. Seek your consumers' knowledge. Don't just stroke a check to an organization, call it a day. Send someone down to those weekly and monthly or those monthly meetings and find out what's happening, or hop on we do a lot of their calls. I know you guys have even been a part of them, where we're talking about what's taking place. I mean, we used to have the procurement breakfast and the luncheons. A lot of that stuff maybe has moved virtual, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't tune in, right? You got to stay connected. And that, I'm sorry, I had to use the softball because you nailed it. You were crushed. You threw it at me, and you guys are on top of it. I mean, you're in the midst in the throes of that. We used to be a oil and gas LNG port. That's what we were. We were a refinery. We got oil and gas stuff out and oil and gas stuff in. Now we're moving to where I'm in Pearland. They just put this massive Amazon warehouse. They just put it right here. It's right by me. And it's just, I watched it go up. It was like one day there was nothing there. All of a sudden, there was an empty warehouse. Next thing you know, there's an army of trucks, and they're just all day long. So somewhere in there's things that are flying through and getting through that port and on its way to these channels because of us, right? Because of the work that you're doing.
Yep. No, that's a great point. And we have to stay engaged. Obviously, lots of opportunities here in Houston. And, we're really excited. We're in a great place. Like I said in the beginning of the show, we're going to grow as the Port of Houston does in this region. So just like the rest of your viewers, we have a vested interest in doing everything we can behind the scenes, to try to facilitate and just try to position, Houston for growth.
Love it. So, well, let's do this. As we get ready to wrap up, I'll let you give you some closing thoughts. But one thing I do want to again acknowledge with you guys and thank you for is your continued commitment to not only serving the organization and the region. You guys have a lot of service programs that I think really are a flagship or a flag for you that other organizations can't say. You have your More Than a Movement Foundation, which I am just a huge fan of, and I would encourage other people to get involved. But and what they do is in turn bringing service to your employees and getting them actively involved in the things that your employees say that they want to be involved in, and that drives engagement. So I think More Than a Move and just the work that y'all are doing is a great testament to that. It's bringing your team together out into the community, out into the things that they believe in, so that they feel like it's hard to get fired up, when you're when you pull something off a boat, put it on a forklift and go drive it somewhere for 8 hours a day and feel like you're making a difference. You're just like, hey, I'm getting paid well. I got some good benefits. I love the job. But y'all's turnover is better than the industry average. You keep people longer than the better industry average. Your people are more content and satisfied with their job than their industry average. And all of those things are a testament to that they actually feel like they're involved with more than just moving things from place to place, but involved and actually making a difference because they get back into the community. So I want to congratulate you guys for your continued work there. Thank you for your continued work there, and also give you a shameless plug for our audience. Listen and reach out to Jamie Hampton from your organization for more details on that on More Than the Move. So as we transition from there, give us some closing thoughts and then we'll wrap up the episode.
Yeah, I mean, and one more thing on More Than the Move too. Really, that's an organization that's there not only to serve Gulf Winds, but they do a lot with other organizations, especially small to medium-sized companies here in Houston and especially out here in the port area. We've got a couple even folks from our industry, even some friendly competitors that utilize their services really to come in and help with volunteerism and really the social aspect of the business. And so obviously that's a huge part of Gulf Winds is we want to make sure there's purpose behind the tactical and the logistics part of moving boxes. And we think that's really going to be our long-term legacy and our success, more so than probably anything else. And so we constantly want to keep that in the forefront. Obviously a lot's changed in the last year, even how we're able to engage on that side. And so we've had to pivot several times and try to reinvent ourselves there, just from an engagement standpoint. But I think the biggest thing, Jason, is that I think we're past the point, probably in business or even as a society, to just say, hey, on this date, things are going to go back to where they were before. And we moved past this a long time ago within COVID. I mean, really early on, which I think is really going to set us up, moving forward. But I think the reality check of there is no date and time when I can go to a conference again, at least to the extent that we were doing before, see people in person. And so, the emotions of not being able to do that, okay, are fine. And then now let's move forward, right? And it's about taking one step at a time. It's also about being open-minded, and that's what we've had to do too. I mean, what worked before may not be the thing that's going to work in the future, and so let's be radically open-minded, as businesses to the changing dynamics, and let's leverage each other. Right? Podcasts like this are a great opportunity. Everything's going digital, so let's leverage experiences of others to try to help our own businesses and our own communities move forward.
I love it. I think you just hit a great call out and a great transition for as we exit the episode is let's leverage and work for one another. And I think right now we have a tendency as we get, we talked a lot about emails and this and that, everybody's taken to the radio waves, trying to figure out how to get the job done. And in doing so, I think, I was reading this morning about in the paper about COVID fatigue. We're all tired from the shift. I mean, our world got flipped upside down 8 months ago. There was about this. You go through those stages, right? There's the denial stage, like this can't be happening. I think everything will be fine. They canceled the rodeo, but I'll be back to normal next week. No big deal. To like, oh, it's not a big deal. It's going to be okay. Then to like, oh my God, the world is ending. We're gonna. This is it, we're all looking in the sky, waiting for Jesus to come. We're all thinking it's game over. And then to like, okay, well, I guess it's time to, put on our pants and tie up our boots and get to work. Right. And so once you move forward and you identify where you're at, you just hit it. Then you have to realize that just like a Harvey or a significant event where as an organization and as a unified region, we come together, I would encourage you this: when someone's reaching out to you and trying to get a phone call or trying to share their ideas or trying to brainstorm or trying to do things, understand, just like you're trying to survive, they're trying to survive. And so a more collaborative, open mind to discussions and creativity and really mind and sharing of best practices. This is the time to really embrace others and what they have to say and how you could use that knowledge, take people like a Patrick and the resources and things that are available from this show and other resources that are out there and use those to leverage your organization to just go get better. We're going to see the best leaders, the best companies, the best organizations, the best people who chose to do something great on the other side of this thing out in front of the pack. I know Gulf Winds will be there. I'm confident the Economic Alliance will be there and carrying other individuals along the way and supporting our region. So with that, I thank you. I think that was a great point. And I want to thank our audience. I would encourage you, stay tuned to our episodes. Again, if you're not following me on LinkedIn, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. My co-host, Clint Aiken, again, we're going to get it back in the studio someday, but he's still out there in the trenches serving our region, doing a great job with his organization, the teams that he's put together. And I want to also thank the Economic Alliance, those that are in the board, those that are a part of the organization, the members of the organization. Hang in there, stay involved, stay connected, and stay engaged in what's happening. We know we got a little bit of an uphill battle, but we're all in the boat rowing together. So get involved, get connected, stay tuned. You can follow us on LinkedIn. You can follow us on Facebook, YouTube, and subscribe to our channels at the Economic Alliance Houston Port Regions website. And we'll see you guys on the next episode. Thanks for tuning in today. Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you.